Okay, so Dr. Jill Biden sat down with Mika Brzezinski. And it was a very hard-hitting... No, it wasn't. And Mika, on the heels of Hunter thumbing his middle finger at Congress yesterday morning, right? He blew off the congressional subpoena, which we've been told by Jack Smith, it's very, very important to comply with subpoenas. You could get criminally prosecuted by Jack Smith if you don't comply with the subpoena. He blew it off. And then when they were having the hearing on whether he should be held in criminal contempt and then refer this case to the Justice Department, he showed up out of nowhere. Hey, hi, how you doing? Here I am, Hunter. And then just got up and walked out when Marjorie Taylor Greene started speaking. And it was just a big middle finger to the entire process and really to the American people. So Mika mentions that incident and Hunter's hot, messy life to Dr. Jill. And here is what she said on SOT 20.
How have you been coping personally with the onslaught of accusations against your husband and your family, including and especially Hunter? It's the focus of a House Oversight Committee hearing, holding him in contempt, obsessing over him, showing pictures of him during vulnerable moments in his battle with addiction on the floor of the House. This would crush any family.
Mika, I think what they are doing to Hunter is cruel. And I'm really proud of how Hunter has rebuilt his life after addiction. You know, I love my son, and it's hurt my grandchildren. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm so concerned about, that it's affecting their lives as well.
It's cruel. It's cruel, Smug.
Yeah. So when first off, she says during vulnerable moments, these photos, you mean the photos he took himself with prostitutes doing crack? Is that a vulnerable moment?
It's pretty vulnerable.
And then when she tries to play the my grandchildren card, you mean like the grandchild that Hunter had with the stripper in Alabama that you guys aren't letting have the last name Biden? The one that you went to court so that they're not allowed to have the name of their father? Real family, family folks over here.
Also, they talk about him like it's some high school kid getting bullied.
Total.
He's 53 years old, Megyn. 53.
Did you happen to notice the people he was with? One of them was the producer of a documentary about him. In his most vulnerable moment, this poor guy brought in his Hollywood benefactor producer to make a show out of it so they can make more money.
Don't you think that's the whole thing? Like, that's the reason why he showed up in the first place. Is like, it'll be great content for the documentary, and then I'll storm out when MTG gets up into the dais.
For sure.
Right?
Yep.
It's like
100%.
This wasn't about he wanted to answer to the subpoena or he wants to comply with the process or wants to tell the truth. This was content. He was making content for a documentary.
Yeah, and
well, he's an artist.
And,
That's what.
And who amongst us hasn't had several crack rock bags and then decided to shake down Chinese governments and things like that, right? I mean,
it's cruel to point it out, Holmes. It's cruel to ask him about it. I mean, it's amazing. Like yesterday, not for nothing, but on the show we had Dean Phillips, the Democrat who's trying to challenge Joe Biden for the nomination. And this is a Democrat centrist candidate from Minnesota. And he was saying, I said, all right, let's put it aside. He claimed he hasn't seen evidence that Joe was involved in any of Hunter's nefarious campaigns. Disagree, but I was like, okay, fine. We only have limited time with the guy. I said, all right, let's table all the evidence that he has. Because we've had the whistleblowers on the show walking us through in great detail the evidence showing Joe knew and had a role. But let's table it. I said, in what world is it okay for the sitting vice president who's in charge of Ukraine policy to let his son sit on a board of a corrupt company over in Ukraine? And he said flat out, it's not. It's not. It's totally wrong. It is corrupt, and it shouldn't have been allowed under any circumstance. Now, that's a Democrat. How is it cruel to now ask Hunter about those relationships, to ask Joe Biden about to say this looks corrupt and it is a family business? She's a liar. I'm sorry, but she's a liar, just like her husband and her son.
Yes.
Well, the one thing that Democrats like the Bidens have become so used to over the years is that they are surprised anybody has to ask any questions. Mm-hmm. It's like, wow, I can't imagine that I actually have to defend anything because I don't usually.
That's right.
And the fact of the matter is that they didn't for an awful long time. It wasn't until a House Republican majority actually did some investigation, which, by the way, they put out all the evidence. And then it's summarily dismissed by the mainstream press. You will not read a single thing about this on the front page of the New York Times, the Washington Post, or the Associated Press, or anything. Like, it just doesn't exist. If you want to actually get the information, you got to read a damn press release.
Yeah.
I mean, really, from the government, from the committee.
Yeah.
Which is wild in contrast to where we were during the Trump years, where if Adam Schiff so much as whispered something to the New York Times that was completely wrong without any evidence whatsoever, it was the front page of the New York Times, and they won Pulitzers for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and somebody asked him a key question yesterday. They said, Mr. Biden, what kind of crack do you normally smoke? And I haven't heard an answer to that question yet. There are people who are actually wondering.
If there's someone who kind of...
Mika could have asked that. She could have asked that.
She could have.
All right, no, that's a joke.
Branding?
But
crack brand.
She did not ask her any hard questions. And it's like, if you're going to sit there and tee it up for the first lady to say, this is cruel what they're doing to my son, then you better, if you actually consider yourself a journalist who criticizes other journalists, get ready for a couple of tough follow-ups. Madam, let me walk you through why they're investigating him. And by the way, why do we have those nudie pics of Hunter? Because he thought his unit was the most photographable, what's the word? Photogenic unit in the world. He couldn't get enough of his own disgusting hairy body. That's the only reason we've seen it.
Megyn, have you seen the footwork?
I can see the footwork. There's footwork that is just unprecedented.
I mean, I think, as funny as that is, that's actually a critical question to ask, because it came from the laptop that campaign told reporters is disinformation. During a campaign, they told the American people is disinformation, and now we know it to be true. Will they be willing to take responsibility for lying to the American people to win an election? Because that's what they did.
So here's how I'm going to tie it together. Go ahead, Ashbrook, and I'll tie it together.
Really quickly before you tie it together, I think we've just stumbled across the reason why Dr. Joe Biden talked to Mika Brzezinski and not Megyn Kelly.
Yeah, there you go.
I think you're right. I just feel it's an egregious fall down on the job. Like, look, I get it. That's her side. She's very clearly voting for the Bidens, and that's okay. Journalists are allowed to vote in elections and have a preference. But when you're across from the other person as a journalist, fucking do your job. I'm sorry. I believe my record stands up on this. I do it. I do it when I'm across from the person I know I'm going to vote for. Why? Because I want to be mean to that person? Because I don't want this person to like me? No, because it's my job.
Especially because Mika and Joe, as part of their show, very frequently are critics of the media and their coverage.
Yep.
Right.
All right.
And they've been critical of Joe Biden and the coverage of Joe Biden. And it's like, you finally have the opportunity to be a real journalist and you fall asleep on the job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this brings me, this is where I tie it all together, Ashbrook, to Morning Joe's take on the Fox News town hall. They were horrified with Brett and Martha. Take a listen to this.
I would call it a softball event. I've never seen one as fawning. I'm not even sure why did they have two hosts there?
Yeah,
they could have just had one to just sit there and smile and say, you're great, ask another softball question. At the Fox News hosts who were just absolute jokes. It was just an embarrassment. Like Fox News, we're going to be for DeSantis. Even DeSantis's people were like, seriously, this is a paid advertisement for Donald Trump, which it was.
Oh my God. All right, look, was there a quote unquote news team in the entire business that did more to see President Trump elected than those two? Was there a more obsequious, fawning pair in media than Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski in 2015 when it came to the Republican race? They licked Trump's boots every morning. They loved the taste of the bottom of his shoes. They couldn't get enough of it. This woman who embarrassed herself with the First Lady has the nerve to sit on that set and rip on Fox News for a fine town hall. It wasn't excoriating. It was fine. She has the nerve after we just pulled some of her highlights. Believe me, we'd be here all day if we pulled Joe's. Here's just a little sample of her back in 2015.
The low rider.
She's rubbing his hair. She's rubbing Trump's hair. Rubbing.
Did
He's
you get
smiling.
a lot of sleep last night?
Well, I got woken up. But
By what?
Well, Donald wanted me to see the CPAC speech. I was skeptical, but I pulled it up on the internet.
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
Pretty good.
Mika, what do you mean pretty good? You know you loved it.
Wow.
Trump, you're naughty.
They're hugging. They're kissing. That's just her.
Yeah.
Spare me your indignation, people.
I love this, Megyn, as you were sort of winding up to that clip. I was ready to call out that clip. It's an absolute mind meld. I've watched that like 15 times. It's so funny.
Who put that together? We got to give credit.
I can't remember, but
we'll find out.
You can find it on YouTube. It's almost like they just let him call in, right? Yeah. And it's like you're talking to your boyfriend, and you're sort of spinning the cord of the phone, like laying on your stomach on your bed late at night, talking to your boyfriend. I mean, that's really what it's like, Megyn. It's
totally.
You nailed it when you said it's obsequious. Like that's what it was, and people forget that.
And also, that is a critical thing. Is for the entire cycle, they had an open airway, open channel. Anytime Trump wanted to call in, he got through. Yeah. No matter what was on his mind, no matter what news was happening, they're like, "Oh, Trump called in, patch him through immediately." And like there was a calculation I remember of the amount of airtime that he got on Morning Joe was more than other candidates super PACs had in their entire budget on ads.
And so, by phone. And not just them, on NBC proper too. On NBC proper. They took phoners from a presidential candidate who very clearly could have been sitting there. Now we know he was actually reading notes it was like so it's fine. It happened, whatever. He went out to become, but spare me. You are not in a position to be criticizing any anchors when it comes to interviews of President Trump. Take a seat. 2024 is here. Sorting through your expense tracking, estimated payments, and all those deductions is overwhelming. It might lead to a failure to file or a failure to pay penalties that pile up on your tax debt. But you can check out Tax Network USA. The attorneys at Tax Network USA have been lifesavers for many. Their team has successfully saved clients over $1 billion in tax debts. Whether you're in the hole for $10,000 or staring at a $10 million debt, they're ready to help you. Even if you haven't filed in 1 to 5 years or a whole decade, the expert attorneys and tax pros at Tax Network USA are equipped to secure the best settlement for you and to help you resolve all tax cases, no matter how they started. Go to taxnetworkusa.com/Megyn or just call 1-800-245-6000. But contact them now as these tax debt relief programs are expected to change. taxnetworkusa.com/Megyn or call 1-800-245-6000 and tell them Megyn Kelly sent you there. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.